Hey everyone, what's going on? This is Joachim Comic Center, and this is yet another episode of Finding Fandom. I think it's episode 15, and this time we are guested by Matt from the Comic Board, which is also another channel where we get different comic book collectors gathering around to discuss our favorite hobby and the books we're reading. And I've been following his show for a long time because my Swedish friend Daniel is also showing up on their show. So of course, like a fellow Swede and collector, I show up as well in the comment section. So it feels like even before this interview that I've known and spoken with Matt for a long time. But now, here with this interview, finally doing it digital, eye to eye, and I won't keep it from you any further. Here is Matt from the Comic Board. Enjoy. Hi, Matt. Thank you for doing this with me.
Great to be on. That's a privilege. Like I said, you laugh, but it was like when I got the invite, and then I was kind of looking over the list. I'm like, I'd watched one with BJ Kicks, and then all of a sudden I'd watched one with Omnidog, and then the Mike from the hardcover group was on there, and I was like, oh wow, to get invited, I just made me feel special. So I'm glad to be part of this.
You are special. That's why you're here. I mean, you caught my attention, and your channel is thanks to that with the Comic Board. And yeah, I mean, I think you were one of the first that I actually listed out to call out by email. And I don't know, I had to like direct you to find said email.
You're not the first person.
but we got you here. We got you here. And you know the concept. I mean, I try to find channels that I deem as I can find value in this, and with the Comic Board and everything, of course, you have the group chats with TJ and of course, Daniel, yeah. My Swedish friend Daniel, who I have to bring him on here also. Damn it, I can't believe, I mean, 15 episodes in, no Daniel. I'll have to change that. And people have also asked me now, and of course this is pre-recorded and time-sensitive matter, but Miriam, Schizo Cookie's channel, people have also asked me to bring her on the show, and I'll ask. I can promise you that much for everyone that is following this. But today, we have the Comic Board Matt with us, also known as Blackpoll. So, familiar with the concept, as you said, you saw some earlier interviews, and yeah, I need some new questions, Matt. I think I need some new material. But as I said to you before we started recording this, I think that they are valuable questions because they can deem different type of answers. So let's warm up. How did you discover comic books?
Yeah. And I love the route that you're doing, where you've got some of these questions that are kind of standard for everybody you're interviewing. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, and when he did his book, the one on Titans of Industry, he took 200 of his podcasts, and at the end of every podcast, he spends like a half hour asking the same questions of all these people that are at the top of their industry, whether they're like a manager for hedge funds or an Olympic athlete or the top actors or directors or writers in their industry. And he created this book after asking the same question to these 200 people. And so I think there's a lot of value in just asking some of these same questions and then getting this wide variety of responses. So I really appreciate that. And this one in particular, after I got done watching the one with the hardcover comics guys, I was like, I had to think about that. I'm like, I saw that question. I'm like, oh, so how did I really? I haven't reflected a whole lot on that. And I remember like the first comics I was in, But then I did a little bit of research on it. I'm like, well, when did that comic start and how did that come around? So I came with a little bit of knowledge. That was the one question I did a little reflecting on and looked at. And it was, I remember it well because I remember biking down to the comic shop and like learning. I was 12 at the time. So this was 1986. And I remember the comic shop, and it was one of those that was run by, some probably 20-year-old kids, and just a kind of a crummy old building, one big long room with boxes everywhere. And I had never heard of this idea of like having a pull list and a mailbox that you could go pick stuff up at. And I had a friend that was introducing me to it. And I just got hooked right away. Like the idea of like biking out of this comic shop every month. And the first comics that I got, and I'm house sitting right now. If I was at home, I'd actually pull out the issues, but I still have all my issues from my original run. I collected Boris the Bear. And are you familiar with Boris the Bear?
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, this is where some of the research came in, because he came about in 1984, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out. And in 86, Boris the Bear came out. It was kind of like these anthropomorphic animals. And Boris the Bear, the first issue is him fighting the teenage, he doesn't call them Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're like the teenage radioactive mutant critters or something like that. And it's him on the front.
Save.
Yeah, it's him on the front with like Rambo gear, because he really bloodily kills these guys. So it was like in this era of blood and gore. And he ends up taking out the Transformers at one point, where he's standing on the cover and the Transformers are behind this bear, and he's got a can opener. He's got this giant can opener. And we find out the bear is a cyborg basically at one point. He opens up his chest and he's got like a Superman logo on there. And long story short, so I did some research into it, and it's interesting because it was Dark Horse Comics' second title behind Dark Horse Presents.
Was this comic book sort of a parody, would you say?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the only way that they could actually implement all of those elements from DC and Transformers, like you said, with the licensing. Because even in movies, the only way that you could get through those licenses is within a parody of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first 4 or 5 or 6 issues start out as just him kind of like taking apart these different well-known comic book characters. And then he gets into a little bit of his own story. And it ran on and off until like 2000, really more off than on. I think they did 29 or 30 issues in the original run. But it's the founder, one of the creators of Dark Horse Comics, is the guy who wrote it. And like I said, it was the second book that came out of Dark Horse. It was so funny because I've been a big fan of Dark Horse Comics for a long time. And I've never realized that was like their second title and that they were kind of that young. And I found them right away. It really clicked with me, this idea of this bear going out and killing all these other, quote unquote superheroes. And it was in black and white as well. So yeah, I still have the entire first run in my short boxes.
Nice. So you still have some of your first comic books then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some left in the basement, very distinct few, and covers ripped off to hell and everything, but some of them are still there. I don't think I ever reread them, but I guess I have some sentimental value actually to some of the things that I actually have.
And that's all it is for me, is the sentimental value. Is like, I want to go back and reread them after talking to you and like looking into it. I'm like, I'm going to go back and pull them out at some point and go through and reread them. It's kind of sparked my interest again and like looking at my roots of how I got into it. And I'll just mention one other thing that kind of before comics, I guess I don't know if you consider it comics or not, but leading up to that, I was a big fan of Mad Magazine. And I don't know if you remember that.
I guess and going back to the parody stuff, that's why Mad can do pretty much anything, because it's in parody form, so they can take any franchises they want and write about it. But I guess they survived the apocalypse that was after the Second World War, and they banned all the horror comics and everything because it was a magazine and not a comic book title.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't know that.
I think it was because the term of it being a magazine.
Yeah,
but yeah. I'm familiar with that. Absolutely.
And that's kind of, I think, where like when I'm looking back, like even before I got into Boris the Bear and my first comics, I was picking up Mad magazines, and I still have a bunch of them where the back covers. I don't remember the back covers. You could like fold them together, and it would create they'd have an image, and then you'd fold it together and connect 2 arrows on the top and the bottom, and then you'd have another image. So it was really cool the way that so all of my old issues have that, where the back cover's all creased up from.
But that's something that they did with the old comics, right? Because I think I have one if I haven't like thrown it away or anything. Because if they still do that, I need to test that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if well, that was the old Mad magazines, but they did that throughout their entire run. I remember them doing that.
Good.
So
then I didn't miss out on anything.
Yeah.
Where do I just stumbled upon someone on Facebook recently that got in trouble with keeping his old comic books in the basement, and I just thought of this and water damage, so I had to call up his company and everything, and it's a real tight spot trying to prove value to a company. I mean, because it's comic books, they wouldn't necessarily value it over the price that you got them for, right? Unless it's CGC and everything that maybe you can prove your matter. What I really want to ask, I guess, is where do you store most of your sentimental value comic books?
Yeah, it's even with my my hardcovers and my comic books, everything's upstairs in a dry room. Like, it's one of those things I struggle with because I like being a collector and I like having this library of hardcover books and my comics and stuff like that. Yeah. But it also, there's a weight to it of like having to keep them out of trouble. What's going to happen if you do put them in the basement? Humidity. I'll never put them in storage. I have a storage unit. I'll never put them in there because it's not temperature controlled. I actually looked for some like real temperature controlled places to try to do them if I did some long-term travel to store them in. But for the most part, they've never been in a basement. They've always been normally in my bedroom in a closet. And I'm planning to do hopefully a long-awaited tour of my shelves, hopefully next week, and where I'm at. And you'll see them because it's actually in my closet. Like, there's no clothes in my closet. I got my bookshelves in my closet and my short boxes as well. So I'm very particular about where I keep them because of those fears of losing all of them.
The follow-up question here is, where are all your clothes then? But I'll skip that. Probably in a drawer, right?
Yeah, a drawer. And I don't really have a whole lot. I mean, I still have. It was funny. I still have a T-shirt from, I want to say 87 or 88, a concert T-shirt that I still have. And so, yeah, I don't go through clothes a whole lot. I'm not one that's really up on fashion.
I mean, I think you're still good. You're talking with a guy that has worn his white T-shirt now for 14 episodes or so.
Yeah.
Or I did break the routine with one video with Comic Bound, but still.
Yeah, I've enjoyed your when I see your minimalist videos and you show your closet and it's like all one color shirt or all one color slacks.
Yeah,
that's there's a lot of value in that, in my opinion.
I mean, it's I'm going to change this up at some point. Finally changed my hair, so let's change something else. I mean, just a footnote on this, because I don't want to talk too much about myself and my minimalism perspective, but recently since moving in with my girlfriend now in this apartment, it's been like 4 months now, quickest months in my life probably. And she said that whenever I take on my one pair of black pants, apparently I've dressed up. I mean, I've lowered the bar so low now. So when I put on some decent pants, I'm dressing up. Yeah, yes, it's the one pair, but I do wash them. You really shouldn't wash pants too much if you didn't know.
Yeah, no, jeans are that way. Jeans.
Yeah, exactly. I have black jeans, so if you wash them too much, they turn gray if you don't do it correctly. So yeah, that's a footnote on that. But
I should have warned you. I'm really good at getting off on tangents that won't go to comic books. Just ask Highland G or anybody that's on live with me.
I mean, it's all good. I should have known. I should have known. But okay, let's talk about the comic book live show.
Yeah.
Because yes, as I do, you do have some guests on there. You have your standard core group, and as well as inviting other guests. And I mean, what started all this? Because this is going on for like 50 episodes now.
Yeah, it's hard to believe looking back. I think we've had the channel for 5 years. The original kind of origin of it was that I was looking to chat with people about comics I was reading, and none of my friends were into it. and I had been watching YouTube stuff. I loved it. It used to be, I was talking about this with For the Love of Comics recently, this idea that I used to basically every night there was a live comic show at some point, and I would work from home and I'd be streaming these live comic shows, interacting, doing my work, but having this entertainment on in the background and hearing about what people were picking up. And JT was doing a show and was on with some other people, and I basically had messaged him, and because they were looking for somebody else to come on. I said, oh man, I'd love to talk. And as things worked out, we kind of created our own channel. And the idea behind the comic board was like a comic board room. We figured it could play doubly. It could play as like, you know, having a comic, like a backing board, but it also could be like a comic board where you had like a boardroom of people to come and join in. And so I've told Daniel and JT all the time, I don't consider it really my channel. I put up most of the content, but I consider it kind of just our channel where we can come and have conversations. And I've been reflecting on that a lot. The idea of like, it's interesting because part of it is what I really wanted out of the comic community for the most part was these live, interactive, getting to know people on a regular basis type shows. And that's kind of where my love was. And that's kind of what the channel's mainly been about. I love edited really well videos. Like your videos are great. Your newest one, the extra scenes with your girlfriend at the end, holding the book and stuff like that. I love edited videos.
The hell yeah method.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. That was the hell yeah method. Yeah. That was excellent. And then I had to rewind it once to see which Batman one was the hell no one. So, but I really like edited videos and well taken care of videos. But for me, my where I really love is just the live stream, getting on, talking, connecting with people. So the comic board kind of grew out of that. And then it was like, who else can we connect with and who else can we chat with? How can we get different voices on? And it's been great because then it's been going on other people's channels like yours. I was on with Highland G with a live stream with Off My Shelves and For the Love of Comics. And so we had 4 different countries represented on there. And that was really interesting to talk with people from different areas and get different opinions and takes. And so I love the community building. And that's where I hope the channel kind of goes. It's more of what I like to do than try to do like a strictly haul video or strictly a review video. One, I don't really have the setup for it. I'd gotten rid of my laptop last year and picked up just a Chromebook as something really easy to do. Can't really do much video editing or processing. I move around quite a bit, so I'm never in the same place for more than a couple months. So like having equipment can be an issue. So yeah, my forte is really, I love the live interaction part of it.
Great. And as you said, you move around a lot, so I guess your setup is quite minimal, I guess, but still it makes do for what you want to do.
Exactly. I got a little portable USB mic that I find just some kind of cheap box to set it on, and it sits up high enough that the sound quality is pretty good, and a USB cam, and then my my Chromebook, and that's kind of my setup. And then it's a matter of like, so I did a live show with Highland G on Friday, and like I had to download an app for my phone because I'm house sitting and like find out, okay, where's the hotspot? Where's the Wi-Fi got the best signal strength? Walked around the house with my phone. Okay, this is where it is. And then try to figure out a light setup, like with the natural lighting and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a mishmash, but it works out.
Yeah, but still, I think that's very good because I'm always in the same place. I mean, I try to control most of my content as much as I can. That's why we pre-record this, Matt. And also whenever Comic-Con comes up, that means travel. And that means I have to take with my gear if I want to produce some content. And of course now it's been a while, but we'll get into Comic-Con and everything. But I just think that with all the gear that I've accumulated now, because there are 2 things that I'm not minimal about, and one of those is my equipment now for YouTube videos. It's what do I bring? Because it's 4 hours to Stockholm from here for me to travel around and to carry with all my stuff. And I don't even remember how much I brought last time, but I don't think I asked Daniel to help me to carry anything. And yeah, so that's something that I really appreciate with you telling me you move around a lot and taking your gear with you and still being able to produce content. Because I remember like one Comic-Con where it was like 3 days in a row where I attended, and I wanted to film, edit, and upload the same weekend, day after day. Not a chance. Too much content, too much to do, but it was still fun to publish it like 1 week later, but on the same representative day. So like a 1 week delay. So whenever we mentioned Saturday, Friday, or anything, it would still match up. But yes, the date was wrong, but nobody watched that. So
yeah, and but you can do like I've seen a lot of people now with the cameras that are out there just on phones, using their phones and producing pretty damn good content because of the quality of what the phones offer now. I've got a camera. I'm into bird watching and kind of a bird geek, and so I've got a camera that I use for birding that shoots video. But I think like, you know, it's got like a 32. I don't know. It's a really small memory card basically, and I probably get 5 to 7 minutes because I wanted to do some like travel log stuff, like when I go to a comic shop and bring it in. But the hard thing is that I normally don't have enough time to do like the whole thing, and I don't normally do any editing. Like trying to find any kind of editing software for a Chromebook is really tough because of how intensive it is, and the hardware in the Chromebook doesn't have the ability to do it. So basically, I kind of got to do most of my stuff in one shot. And figuring out a way to do that can be a little bit limiting, but it also at times is freeing in the fact there's times where I really want to do something and I can't do it. But there's a lot of times when I've got an idea and it's going to take up like 8 or 10 hours of my time, and I just got to give up on it because I know I can't do it. And then I spend that time reading or doing something else. So it works out.
I mean, as long as you feel that you're doing something productive. And I mean, if the desire is big enough, you'll do it eventually and find time for it as well. I have many videos that I pushed and pushed and pushed because of the time it actually takes to get it out. I mean, of course, this is time sensitive matter because this is like weeks ago, but in the month of September, I uploaded a couple of videos that were no vocals. I mean, I didn't talk anything. I did one haul video with Starman Compendium, like an overview of it with unboxing it and everything, just trying some artsy shots and everything. But I mean, more than an overview, it was really nothing. And the same goes for the week after that. It was my local library. But I mean, I'm very happy with that video. I am, but I've had that finished for like 3 months before I uploaded it. It was just a question of like, when do I need this and can I make it better? Because I was trying to make it perfect. And that really, really delayed a lot of my videos, just trying to strive for that. And I realized that it's better just to publish it and just work on your craft video per video, because with perfect you'll never publish it if that is your like stretch goal. So rather just upload it. And the hard thing there was like music. It took me hours.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits of live stream.
yeah I mean, go with the flow and everything. And I can admire people still that do the turn off the camera, speak your mind, and then turn it off, because it probably means that you're not as hesitant. Maybe you can stumble a bit on your words, but I mean, you have a clear mind of what you want to say. I do scripts to a lot of my own videos, so, and a lot of retakes and a lot of editing and just Frankenstein it all into a full sentence.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's a lot of times where you know, my best ideas come when I'm taking a shower and I've got the whole thing played out in my head, exactly how I'd like to word a review, and oh, this sounds great. And then I get in front of the camera and I don't script anything, and it's like I just bumble my way through it. And I'm still okay with that. I'll throw it out there. It's not really what I wanted to say. I feel like I could have done it better, but I did what I wanted to do with the channel. But there's also that, like, the group that, you know, Sleepy Reader, there's a bunch of people out there, Comic Crack, who just get on and do live streams or do recordings by themselves. But their live streams, especially when they just get on, it's almost like a radio show host for 45 minutes or an hour. Yeah,
definitely with Sleepy Reader.
Yeah, and for them to be able to hold my attention and to have a conversation amongst themselves and to share thoughts for that long, just alone, that to me is amazing. Like, that's one of the things I've learned is, like, kind of, like I said, I like doing the live streams and interacting with people. I don't think I can just get on and just talk for an hour and just start sharing things like they can. And doing the editing part, there's so much time and effort, and the content looks so great when it's done correctly. I love the comic book community for that. There's all these different ways to create content and get it out there. And it's kind of just finding your forte and what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, I take my inspiration a lot from other type of YouTube channels, because I mean, because I saw the same thing with a lot of the comic channels. I mean, the haul videos of a graphic novel collection and the review videos. I mean, those are your three pillars.
Yeah.
For the content and everything. It's solid content. I mean, to get the content flowing and everything, but then there's the aspect question of quality and everything. But each to their own on what you deem quality. But I looked at some vloggers. I mean, travel vlogs and I mean music videos and everything. I took inspiration from things like that to make haul videos and maybe more storytelling wise videos, because I was thinking with my minimalist agenda and everything, or my minimalist perspective agenda was such a harsh word, Melanie said, but I wanted to show a different perspective, because I felt that for 8-9 years I've never shown a real opinion really on the channel. And so that's why I turned it to like how I collect rather than what I collect.
Yeah, that's excellent. Because that's part of at times where I figure out with the comic board channel, and times I've stumbled with it where like I'm trying to do haul videos or reviews because that's the thing to do. That's what everybody else is doing. And as I reflected on it, like for this coming on and talking to you today, it was like, well, what I've really learning is that I really like the live stream stuff, as we talked about a lot. But the ones that I watched the most, like how I got hooked on Mad Dog Comics, was he was doing Whale Watch. And I saw that and I was like, that's cool. I like knowing what may be going out of print, what he's seeing or what trends he's looking at. Nobody's kind of doing that. And I really enjoyed that kind of perspective. And that kind of hooked me on his channel right away. With you, when I was reflecting on your channel, it was like, it's been one of the things I've been looking at a lot is this idea of the comic community seems like they want comic content and that's it for the most part. Like trying to bring in content on music onto a comic channel isn't going to work. Book stuff, prose onto a comic channel doesn't do as well. But you found this niche where you've been able to bring in like a variety of things that are around just the hobby and not necessarily just focused on comics. And I love that because it's expanded what's kind of possible in the comic community, to me anyway, is the way I look at it. And it's just unique. It's like you're successful doing that, where there's a lot of channels that struggle when they try to go outside of just one of the comic book formats, whether it's a review or a haul or a live stream, and they try to get into a different topic. You brought in minimalism, you brought in your move, the library, this challenge that you've just put forth for the next couple of months with hobbies and going back to focus on hobbies. And you've brought those in and retained your viewership and expanded kind of your storytelling. Yeah.
And I mean, the process with it was, I think I changed my audience for a while, because there was a time where, I mean, subscriber count, people, you should not let the subscriber count command you on what to do, everything. But of course, it is something you look at to know if you're actually moving in the right direction for your current viewership. So I noticed that with the change of the channel and opening up my mind, that I was losing subscribers, but also gaining ones. So my numbers sort of stuck. But that was the exchanging of the audience. So people that weren't as open-minded to my ideas and everything left off. And that's all well good, because they can spend their time with something that they rather enjoy. And then people that want to hear more and learn more stuck around. And then more and more that doesn't know anything else about my channel just keeps on adding on. So the transformation and metamorphosis of a channel, I mean, it had a time where it was sort of stuck with the numbers and everything. But now I think I've settled the new ground for what the channel is. I still have a lot of old videos and haul videos and everything that I did. But when I marked that 99 In-Stock Trades graphic novel haul as the last haul, I didn't know what I was doing really, because I was thinking making that statement is going to make everybody leave. This guy is not going to buy comic books anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, as you mentioned, like the numbers. I mean, I like to think I'm above everything else, and I'm this great, you know, enlightened wisdom guy that doesn't have to worry about numbers or social media accounts or all that. But it still does. I still check it. You know, I'm be completely honest. It's just one of those things where you kind of look in and you're like, oh, I'm really stagnant or I'm not. And it does, it's got this weird pervasive thing that it kind of worms into your mind, even if you don't want it to. And it's somewhat of a constant battle to like, it comes up and you hear it and you kind of buy into it, the idea of these numbers being important. And then you come to reason and you're like, it doesn't matter. It's not as important as what I want to do, the voice. And you kind of mentioned it's like the life idea, like your channel starts and it starts to grow and then you feel stagnant and then you have to change something up. And that's life in general in a large perspective. And just the wisdom of knowing when you hit that spot. I think as I've gotten older, I feel like that wisdom, that knowledge comes up a little bit quicker. Like, oh, I'm starting to stagnate a little bit. I need to change something in my life. I need to do something a little bit different to re-energize myself. And I hope that as time goes on, that growth continues. Like I recognize that sooner, and there's a little bit less unease or unsatisfactoriness.
Yeah. And I mean, the numbers game and everything, I of course try to avoid it but it all depends on why you're doing it also, because I'm reading Steve Jobs' self-biography right now. So this is pretty fresh in my mind, but they mentioned that you never start a company to make money. Because then it will eventually fall apart, because you have to go in with the idea and want to create. So if you go into YouTube, starting your own channel, being inspired by watching all this, don't do it for the subscriber. Don't do it to earn the money, because in the end, it has to be about what you produce and the content that you provide to give value to other people, I believe.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was going to say, I had two little comments on that. One, I was just watching, one of the guys I watch is, it's a booktube channel specifically on sci-fi and some horror and fantasy and stuff like that, called Death Media Cult. And he's got tons of subscribers, but every month he shows what he gets from YouTube. And I think in August, he had like 84,000 views on his channel. And I think he made $460. He's really open and honest with it. So like you'd think, you know, $84,000 is going to bring it, and I'm not in it for the money or anything, but it really puts into perspective, like the people that can make a living off of YouTube, how much time and effort really has to go in to get those views. And then speaking of like what the Jobs thing does, it just reminds me of what Elon Musk has done with his life. I'm a big Elon Musk fan, and his goal on life is to die on Mars, which I find fascinating. And so that's where SpaceX comes from. And most people, I don't think realize that the Tesla car wasn't his goal. His goal was to make batteries that would last longer. And the proof of concept, in order to prove that those batteries were going to do that, he built the car around it. So he went in with the idea for creating batteries, and he had to build the car around to prove that it was working correctly. And so it's just really interesting, these ways that if we come in and we approach it with a long-term goal, and then we kind of figure out what's going to work for us, versus like you said, you know, I've got to get X amount of subscribers, or I got to get this many hits or this many likes. It kind of changes just how we view and what we view as successful and what we don't.
Exactly. And now we go into the viewing, as you said, with success and everything. What is success? And the question I started to ask was, because the last thing that I tackled with my things and everything going into minimalism like 2 or 3 years ago was like my graphic novel collection. I never touched that, but because I never thought that I would have to go to it. But after moving 900 books, my dad said, "You are not taking all this back with you, or I'm not helping if that's the case." I mean, there's some hard truth, but I think he was joking, but I still know what he meant by it. So I started rereading my books and sell off the books. This is an old story now, but that's the case. And I started to reflect on what is this collection supposed to look like then? Because when I set it up with 4 Billy shelves in a row and 2 other to the side that couldn't be shown in the same angle, but I mean, it looked like a massive library, right? And that was, for a time, what I thought it was supposed to be. This is a comic book collection. This is a pure graphic novel collection. But going in, checking book for book, what it did for me, if it was something that I enjoyed, if it was something that I would read again, or if it was something that, oh, I forgot that I hated this. Because one or two books actually had those strong feelings with them. Starting to question, okay, what is a graphic novel collection for me? And that's when I did make a better collection video, my perspective on it. And it was just me talking to the camera and spurring out everything, why I started with minimalism and everything.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, I might have this wrong, but I always associate it with you anyways. I think you were the first one that put it in my head, the idea of cultivation. Is that there's a lot of collection, a lot of unhaul or haul videos and stuff like that. But the idea of cultivating the collection. I've heard JLS Comics, he used to do a live show on Tuesday nights. I loved his stuff. He always said, collect what you love. That's always stuck in my head. But I think if I remember right, that the idea of cultivating the collection and that seed getting planted from one of your videos I saw, and it kind of changed too how I started looking at my collection. And your Hell Yeah video actually yesterday allowed me to put another book up on eBay that I wasn't planning on doing.
Nice.
It was just like the idea of like, yeah, I should look at that book. And I just finished Ether. That was the book that it was a Matt Kint, the library edition from Dark Horse, and Highland G and I reviewed it. And the story was all right. I gave it 3 stars, mainly because of the art. I could see pulling it down and rereading it again, but it's not one that I would look at on my shelf and go, hell yeah. And just watch that video, it's just like, okay, there's one more book that's off my shelf that isn't going to bring me the joy that I want. And I had talked about this, in a live stream, and I think Daniel was on it. It might have even been one of our Tuesday shows, maybe a year and a half ago, just like the idea of this existential weight of all the books that you've got, having to care for them, having to move them, having to take care of them, not making sure they don't get water damaged. And I always joke, there's a Buddhist monk from the 19th century who said, if you have ox, you have ox problems. If you have a house, you have house problems. If you have a large collection, you're going to have large collection problems. There's a little bit of, am I reading them? And if you're not reading them, well, why did I buy them? And then you start thinking about that, and that may cause some stress, or they get damaged and that causes you stress, or I've got to move them and that causes you stress. Anything we own, there's a cost to it. And I like to think of it in that way. And at times I've went overboard. And so like I feel the same way. I feel like I've got too many books, even though I don't have the 900 that you had. I feel like I still have too many.
It's all dependent on how much free time you have. There's no correct number for what's too much or too little. It's all depending on what is enough for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think too many ask that question to themselves.
Yeah, and even with like what I've started doing with my pre-orders now, I've done two things differently with my pre-order forms, because I've been pre-ordering all my books. One of them is I have an idea, like I go through the solicits each month and look at what do I really want, and I keep it in a spreadsheet. It's the geek side of me. And then when the pre-order form comes in, I go through and I check all those. Well, I used to do, put in my order and then immediately send it off to the comic shop that I go through. And now I started doing it because I usually get them 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. Now I started doing it where I fill out my form and then I just save it and I let it sit. And it's funny, like this last month is a perfect example. I bet you I went into that form 6 or 7 times and added a book or 2 and then took it back off. And then a couple days later, it was like, no, I really do want it. And I would go back in and add it. And then it would be a couple days later and I took it off. And in the end, my pre-order went from like $260 to just under $100. I ended up letting go of those books. Yeah. I thought, you know what, come March when it's going to be released, if I really want it, I'll pick it up then. But I don't need to necessarily pre-order it. And maybe my mindset will be different then. And so it was just a really interesting way to kind of deal with the pre-order form of like giving it some time and really kind of contemplating and thinking, do I need this? And the other thing I've been doing is looking at my collection of unread books. And then on my pre-order form going, okay, I'm going to add this book to my collection now. What am I going to sacrifice reading from my shelves right now? Or what would I rather read on my shelves right now that I haven't gotten into? I mean, I've got the Brubaker, Bendis, Wade, Daredevil run. Yeah. And I've touched very, very little of it. And I've been meaning to for the longest. Yeah, that's my reaction. It's like, I really want to get into that. And I get sidetracked by other books, or I'm reading something else. And so I'm really more intentionally trying to figure out, what do I really want to read? And I've got more than enough stuff on my shelves to keep me busy for at least a year.
Damn. So I mean, I usually ask how many books do you have, but I mean, can I ask you how many books are on your backlog right now? Graphic novel books.
Yeah. I meant to count them all up. But I'm gonna guess. It wasn't as
number.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought, because I just did one cubicle of my Calyx shelf, and I was like, wow, I actually read more than I thought. I'm gonna say that somewhere between 25 and 35% of my collection is unread.
Oh, percent. I was
percent
wise. Gonna say 25 or 35 books. I was gonna say that's not too
bad. No, and that's probably out of I'm gonna estimate maybe around 300 total titles, somewhere in there. So that brings in maybe 75 to 90 of those books are unread, which is a pretty heavy number. And granted, I will mention this too, though. I don't like doing it, but I do read digitally. I've got a 10-inch tablet.
That counts. Yeah.
And I've got you did the video on it. I've got a library app that I can use. I don't like it because I don't like the strain on the eye from digital stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
But the two things it allows me to do is, one, when I travel, I can take stuff with me. I'm still connected to my library. I get 6 or 8 borrows every month. And the other thing is it allows me to test out books. Like, I really thought I was going to like All-Star Superman, and the deluxe edition's coming out. And I was really thinking about picking up Arkham Asylum, the deluxe edition. And I read them both digitally and was like, nah, I don't really need to get them in the hardcover format, and save myself some money and some time. And so there is some benefit, as you mentioned in your video, to digital collecting as well.
Yeah. And I didn't even subscribe to anything myself in that video. That was like the most clickbaity video that I actually have, I think, going digital, because it was so much else that I brought up, like my drawings and everything that I wanted to, and old photos, making them digital in case the worst case would happen, water or fire. But everyone's still just hooked on the comic book, because that's, of course, what people are mostly joining me for with my videos. Still Joakim Comic Center. I can't believe it that I can still have that name.
I've thought about that too. Have you ever thought about renaming your channel? Because as it's changed?
It has been like 10 years with this name now. And I think I'll still stick with it. I mean, if I would change anything, I still want it to be the initials JCC. So Joakim Creative Center or something like that. I don't know, but I still like the ring of it. Joakim Comic Center, that's the name they know now. So I'll keep with that. And as long as I can still keep mending the two of hobbies and creative stuff around it, I think the name still justifies itself.
Yeah, I've thought about that with because I like to do novel reviews, and my reading preferences change. Like, I'll go through big periods of a year where all I'm reading is graphic novels, or mainly graphic novels, and then it'll change. I'll start reading a lot more prose and literary fiction and stuff like that, and I'll go back and forth. And so I've thought about, like, contemplate, like, do I create a second channel for prose to do prose reviews, because those are fun to do. I can just get on. I don't have to show art. Just get on, just talk about what I'm reading. And I was talking about this in a chat or a comment section of one of my videos with Gore Vidal. This idea that, like, it seems like the comic community just really wants comic content. And yet when I watch my booktube channels, my friends that do all sorts of great book stuff and they're reviewing prose, they always drop in graphic novels that they want, stuff they want. And they're a little bit more
works for one way, but not the other.
Yeah. It's like that subgenre of reading of comics and graphic novels doesn't want as much to do with prose, whereas the people who are reading prose are open to a little bit more. That's the theory that I've got in my head right now that's been running around. And I actually thought about, like, at some point I would love to do a live stream, get Gore Vidal on. He doesn't really do live streams. I've tried to get him on a couple times.
Okay.
Get For the Love of Comics on, get yourself on, and get like one person that's really big into the booktube community and kind of discuss that, where that barrier is. Cause I think it would be an interesting topic to really dive into.
Absolutely. Because we all try to, like, feel the border a bit, what we can do. And I mean, we all tried different stuff at some points, and that really didn't work, didn't give the views. I don't think so much on the views as much as the comments, because I love the interaction and everything. So that's the thing that I want out of my videos most: interaction, just and keep on talking about it and learn more. I should mention about, we talked about backlog and everything. And I mean, with that backlog, how many books would you say that you read in a month? Because I have something to shock you with.
Yeah, I've gone anywhere from like when I'm really into like graphic novels. I mean, I'm reading like, if I do a month where I'm just die hard into it, it'll be issues wise like upwards of 200 issues. I can do 180 to 240 issues. I've done some. I used to do my what I read this month, and I would look at the number of issues, and it was fluctuating between 180 and 240. Right now, I'm kind of in a sci-fi kick, and I've been reading just a ton of prose, and I'm probably reading like 6 to 8 hours on average every day. Like I'm just chunks.
Wow.
Yeah. So just chunks of reading. And I've set down a little bit of the comic stuff because of some of the science fiction stuff I've been reading that's really juiced me up. And it's interesting because I was talking to you a little bit about this in your comments on the hobby video.
Yeah.
I've noticed that like when I need a jump start in something, like I read Batman Dark Victory. We reviewed that on the Comic Board channel, and it just enlivened me to go read a bunch of more good comics. Yeah. And so I'm starting to find out like what really, like when something starts to drop, like my motivation in one hobby, what's going to reignite that? What's going to bring that up? And with comics, it's like, man, if I get into something really well done, that's all I want to do is I want to devour that. And lately I've been reading just such great sci-fi prose that all I want to do is devour that.
Nice. I mean, with 6 to 8 hours and reading all prose, would you say when you go back to comic books that you read those so much faster just because less wording and everything, or do you take your time with panels and everything?
Yeah, I try to take my time as much as possible with the panels. Okay. I really like the artwork part of it. And there's times where I don't spend enough time with it. I don't notice it. I've noticed that recently with the Final Four. I read the Mark Waid omnibus on Fantastic Four. Read the Mark Waid omnibus, and there was no bookmark in it, no ribbon. And so when I was opening it back up to find out what page I was in, I was like, oh, I didn't read that part yet. And then I started jumping back, and all of a sudden I was like, yeah, I did read that. And then I got to that art, and I'm like, oh, I did read that, and I just hadn't seen that piece of art. And I'm like, I'm going too fast through it. I'm not enjoying it, and that's my ding to like slow down a little bit.
I get it. I totally get it. Let's see here. I mean, because this month of September, when we're recording this, I think we're airing this in November. I did my gaming hobby to do 30 days of gaming. I didn't manage it all the way. Some days I had to set it aside, but I mean, even with comic books, when that was my go-to hobby for the month, I didn't read every day. But then again, I didn't have a certain goal with it. I just wanted to read books for my monthly review videos and everything to show people what I've read instead of what I've hauled. But the thing is with, and people know this already because this is so much later, and I'll tell you this now. I read 0 graphic novels the month of September.
Oh, wow.
Thanks. Wow. Yeah, wow for that. And that's just because I switched my priorities to gaming. That was a hobby to focus on and try to take at least 10 minutes of gaming each day. And I managed to only finished 2 games, Batman Arkham City and Arkham Knight, because it's a lot of time into those games. I didn't even finish all the side quests. But
so I got a question for you around that then. Have you had time to reflect on what it was like to go 30 days without reading comics? And did anything come about from it?
Oh, everything. Of course, I've already made a video of this, but I'll tell you here and now, because this pre-recording thing is so confusing. You have no idea. But I'll tell you this. I mean, with the month of September, no reading and only gaming, I reflected on what I get out of gaming. And I always went into video games doing it for the story and nothing else. I never did it because of the graphics, what you could do with the character and anything. Never first person, and always set on easy so that you could play along and get through the main story as fast as you could. So I got heavy into Assassin's Creed and Batman games, Spider-Man games, and so on and so forth. And then I sold a couple of them off as time went by, and now I ended up with like 8 games. on different genres, but mainly superheroes. And I mean, storytelling is what I want out of it, but it's like watching a 20-hour long movie. And after you've seen it once, you sort of remembers it. But I still always found the Arkham games replayable. But I mean, if it's only a good story that I'm out after, the comic books provides that.
Yeah.
It's just a different, it's not motion. That's the only difference, really, if I put it really crass. Because as I said, I don't get anything out of it of sitting playing with the control, really, because I don't need to take out my aggressions or anything on it or anything else. So I don't find it especially more enjoyable than I would if I were holding the book and reading a story that was the same story reflected on TV. So maybe I could definitely give up all of my video games actually and sell my console just to replace it with a 4K Blu-ray player instead.
Oh, wow. Oh. That sounds like there's some good learning coming out of that then, out of that 30 days.
Absolutely, because, and I was just looking at my bookshelves and everything. As I said, I've read Steve Jobs' self-biography and everything, but that's nothing that touches anything on the graphic novel shelves in the bedroom. I was just looking at them, and nothing has been touched for a month. And it just stood still in all sort of ways. I wasn't stressed necessarily because I only received 2 new books this month of September, but still, I have my reading goals with the challenges that's on Goodreads and everything. I want to finish 150 books before the end of the year. I've read 120, so 30 books to go, and now I'm 1 month handicapped of not having that time anymore. So it puts it in that perspective. I still think I can manage my goal because I think previous years I've read like 180 books up to 200 because I've logged my reading books years before I actually discovered Goodreads. But still, the 30-day challenges absolutely worked to put things in perspective.
Yeah. In the long run, that knowledge that you got is going to stick with you for a long time, more than did I hit my Goodreads goal in 2021? If for some reason you don't hit that, that's just a little bit arbitrary. Whereas this
I know
knowledge,
what's to blame if I don't hit that.
Yeah, and if you don't, that's, to me anyways, that sacrifice was worth it. Yeah, that sacrifice to get that knowledge, I think, would be totally worth it. It was really interesting hearing you talking about the themes. I never really thought about the. I haven't gamed in a long time as far as console games go, but that your focus is on themes, that's really cool. Mine was always on like the puzzle solving and that stuff, but I like hearing that the theme is what dragged you in and trying to get the story of the game. That to me is really cool.
So like I said, I could really watch a movie instead, still get something out of it.
Yeah.
So, but of course, it's the accessibility to the whole movie, but everybody is recording now, so I can just go on YouTube and watch it like that. And if you don't have a problem watching gameplay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've managed like 50 minutes without me pulling up a single question.
I told you to look out because I can get us off on any kind of topic.
I mean, this is just awesome. So I have to stick with some favorites here. What is your best advice to control the fear of missing out?
Giving yourself space. And this comes from, I have a background in meditation. Done a couple of long 3+ month retreats of silent meditation. And so the retreat center that I'm at is actually based around meditation retreats. I've done well over a year of my life has been spent in silent meditation and with a couple of longer stints. So my daily routine is, get up within the first 5 or 10 minutes. I'm usually doing a 45-minute meditation sit in the morning. That's my routine to get the mind quieted a little bit. And then I read right away. But for fear of missing out, it's giving yourself that time. It's like that, like I said, with my pre-order of putting them on there and then not sending it in and then letting it just ruminate. Your subconscious will do a lot of thinking. If you're hesitant on a book or you're like kind of like do I want to spend the money on this? Do I have the money to spend? Am I going to go into debt? Am I going to read this? If you put it out, if you decide you want the book, let it sit for a couple of days, and your subconscious kind of works on it and chews on it and chews on it. And at some point, there's like that light bulb or that epiphany comes up. And you're like, oh, I really don't. I did this with, I'm a vinyl record collector as well. And I did this with vinyl records. My buddy laughs at me there was one time this website had a huge sale on like everything they had. So like I spent like 3 hours going through pages and pages of albums and looking for all the deals. And I was adding them to my cart, adding to my cart, adding to my cart. And at the end of 3 hours, I maybe had like $150 worth. It wasn't a huge amount by any means. It was something I could afford. But at the end of the 3 hours, I was like, that felt really rewarding. I closed the browser and walked away and didn't buy a single thing. Just adding to the cart felt really good in itself. It's just one of those things, like for me, that fear of missing out is just giving it some time and oops.
There we go. I can still hear you.
Yeah. My camera wire jiggled a little bit. Giving it some time and just letting it ruminate and thinking if it's really something that's going to bring joy and happiness into your life. Like I said, the JLS idea of collect what you love, or your idea of cultivation, you know, we're limited in how much time we've got on this planet. Where do I want to spend it?
Oh, I really didn't know that about the meditation part about you. And now I'm thinking back on the video that I made.
No, it's great. I love seeing, I love hearing anybody talking about it, stuff like that. Any kind of contemplation on life.
I mean,
yeah.
But meditation is something that I've been open for. Actually, I paradised it in my intro video for the 30 Days Challenges video. But that was just to put some perspective on what you usually see with 30 Days Challenges, wanting to improve some habits or routines within your life, like exercise, eating healthier, or, I mean, yoga and meditation, whatnot. And meditation is something that I wanted to dwell in because I used to have anxiety attacks, and I'm not ashamed of it. I work at like the local food store and everything, sitting in the register and everything, and that's not a place where you want to have a panic attack when there's a whole lot of people waiting for you.
Yeah. I've had panic attacks before in my life. Nothing super serious, but the last one that I had, I was pretty deep into my meditation career, my journey down the meditation path. And I felt it coming on, and it was great. It was the last time I had it, and I went and I laid down and I just meditated with it. It was like, okay, what is this? What is this anxiety? Oh, there's heat in the body. Oh, look, there's a lot of energy. Oh, my hands are sweating. And it was just following what was going on in the body and not pushing it away, like, oh my God, I can't handle this. It was just having an investigative mind. One of my favorite meditation teachers, he says, if you want to understand the mind, sit down and observe it. Yeah. It's like, it's so simple. That's what science does with anything. And then we kind of disassociate from our thoughts a little bit. Again, I can get off on any kind of tangent you want. So
I know, but I want to get into this a little because I recently rewatched for like the 10th time a life coach assembly from Stockholm, Sweden. It was back in the 1990s, but it's still relevant today. There's this sports life coach called Kjell Enhager that has a seminar called Jag AB that would be translated to see yourself as your own corporation. My corporation, I guess you could translate it to. If you see yourself as a company, I mean, and it dives into a lot of things like mindset on everything and personality and what you want to do and what you want to be and how to do that. He gets into one of the sections where they talk about anxiety and attacks and such, or stressed, or when you're nervous, and he simply asks the questions, what do you do? I mean, when you're getting nervous, what happens? What do you do when you're getting nervous? Oh, I get sweaty. I start thinking about this and start doing this with my hands and everything. And so when you know what you do, when you get that feeling, do the opposite, and you can't feel that feeling. So if you know what you do when you get in a certain way, do the opposite. So, but you can't get away from that feeling. I mean, it's oversimplified now when I tell you, but I hope you get what I mean by it.
Yeah, it's one of the ideas that it's pointing to is the idea that the body's going to alert you
exactly
to something before your mind will. The hands get sweaty, the shoulders get tight, the jaw starts to clench, something happens, the chest gets tight. The idea of meditation is to be aware of what's going on. And if you're aware of the body and what's happening in the body, you notice these triggers before they actually get to the mind. And then by noticing them, that's when you have a choice. Like, do I want to believe in that this is something bad that's going to happen? Or is it just the body doing its thing? And I can just watch it do its thing and then let it go and not have to react to it. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Okay, good. So yeah, that's like one of the valuable tangents that I'll take with me from this show, actually. And I mean, it's all valuable, Matt. Don't take it wrong.
Yeah, I can get off, like I said, when it starts talking meditation, because it's been a big focus of my life for years. And I do work in the prisons in our state. I volunteer in the prisons doing meditation stuff. And so, yeah, it's kind of one of my big focuses. So I can ramble and ramble. Birds, meditation, books, comics, look out.
We have a 3-hour show here. You've already answered this sort of, what is the best thing about the YouTube comic book community?
Yeah, for me, it's this kind of thing, getting to know you, getting to know others in the community. It's not even about the books per se. I mean, I read, and that's solitary. That has nothing to do with it. This is about connecting with people, learning from people, learning about other cultures. Yeah, it's just really the relationships that I've built. Daniel and I have talked about hopefully going to get over to Europe, depending on what happens to the virus next year, maybe the year after, about going and spending time in Spain, and him coming down and meeting up with me. And we've talked briefly, and I've talked with Daniel about maybe coming over to the New York Comic-Con at some time, and JT and him and I, and possibly yourself at some point, if it works out, all getting together at that. So like these ideas of just building relationships with people, that's more important to me than the time I get to spend reading.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to visit New York Comic Con. I mean, there's a lot of factors to get into, but I think we still have the time, and we need to observe the future situations and everything. So thank you for the invite. And yeah, the community, as you said, top notch thing to get into.
Yeah, I met so many great people and friends, and learned so much. And it's always funny, like sometimes I'll do a live stream, and somebody that I had been live stream chatting with in the comments back in 2016, and they had a channel and they were running stuff like the Chinnis comes to my head, or I really connected with him. I hadn't heard from him in a couple of years, and he'll pop into the comments, and it'll just make my day. Like, oh my God, I haven't thought of you in a while. It's great to hear from you. And it's like, just, I still have those relationships with some of these people that I've been building over the last, 5+ years.
Yeah. And this is the first time we speak to each other live and everything to each other. But I mean, it doesn't feel like that. Not with the comment section and everything. You always responded quickly to my comments and everything on the Comic Board live show. So it feels like I've already had some of these conversations already. And gotten very rich answers through the years.
Yeah, definitely.
I have, this is like a hard question to bring out without any preparation. But name a book that you would want universal availability and understanding for everybody who is into comics. Something that you simply enjoy and you want everybody to have, if you could choose one.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one, it's a tough. There's two of them that are on the top of my head, but the one that I've just fell in love with was Terry Moore's Strangers in Paradise. Because it's a mixture of, it's a mashup of genres. It's a 2,000+ page tome of, there's slice of life, there's espionage, there's art, cultural art, there's loss of life, there's meaning, there's so much to it. It's beautifully drawn in black and white. It takes twists and turns. And I was just talking with Gore actually last night in a live stream in a chat, and he was saying that Terry Moore had said that what really was his foundation for Strangers in Paradise was the James Bond, the books by Ian Fleming, some of his young authors YA reading, and then a cousin who had AIDS. He said those three things were kind of like the basis for what made him create Strangers in Paradise. And it's just, it shows, especially for people that aren't into comics, even for people that are into comics, are going to love it. Everybody I've recommended it to has come back and said, oh my God, that was great. But the people that aren't into comics, those are the ones I really want to introduce it to, because those are the ones I can say, like, this is what comics can do as a medium. This is how enriching it can be. This is how powerful it can be. It's not just about superheroes in tights. It can be more than that.
Nice. And you took this question to the length that I wanted to be, like universal availability, not only for comic book collectors, but anyone that has any hesitation on what comic books is and everything. Here's the book and you'll love it. And you did.
Yeah.
Here we have one of our standards. What makes you a comic book fan?
First and foremost is the storytelling, the writing. It's got to be, I got to have, for, you know, Ether, we were talking about Ether earlier, and that was one that the art, Dave Rubin does the art, he does the inks, he does the coloring, he does the lettering, does it all, and it's gorgeous. But the story doesn't kind of live up for me. And as much as I want to keep it for the art, it's not enough to leave it on my shelf. It's not something that, like I said, makes me say, hell yeah. Storytelling for me is definitely where it's at. And I love, there's two other things. I mean, sometimes the big two, DC and Marvel, get poo-pooed, like, oh, Superman, it's, you know, I just mentioned like, oh, it's superheroes in tights or whatever. But I love the idea that there's this real challenge for somebody who's got 80 years of history. The challenge for these writers is to pretend like the character is being changed, and yet at the end of the story, he's the exact same person he was, because they can't change it. And to me, there's a real, I mean, the craftsmanship to do that and to do it well is just amazing. I love good storytelling.
Talent.
Yeah. I've often mentioned it to a buddy who went and saw Rush at the end of their career, the band Rush. And he said, yeah, they played all the hits and I said, how were they? And he's like, oh, they were great. They were incredible. I was like, can you imagine being on the road for like, 30 plus years and playing the same song night after night and making it seem like it's the first time you've played it? That to me is just unbelievable. That's creative talent. That's beautiful.
That's passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you describe your fandom?
Oh, I'm a reader first. I guess it takes how would I describe my fandom? Yeah, I'm definitely a reader first. I want something that's going to enliven me. My fandom is basically based off of, and I'm one of those, when I find a writer that if I find a writer that doesn't hit home with me, I'm willing to give them multiple chances. Yeah. I've recently found like Brian K. Vaughan doesn't connect with me. I've read 3 or 4 things. I've read Ex Machina, Why the Last Man, things that just didn't connect with me. Paper Girls did, Saga did, but for the most part, I've been finding things that don't. And then I find other writers who just their style and their sense. Brian Wood is one of them. Almost everything he writes, I find enjoyment in. And so Jeff Lemire is another one. As I start to find those guys, then I just search out even their stuff that's Brian Wood. I went back to one of his first books called Couriers, which is not that good, but I wanted to see his progression as a writer and as an artist. And so my fandom is really, as I start to find things, I want to dive in and know as much as I can about them. I really want to read their entire collections, their entire works. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing when it comes into like a fandom for sci-fi reading. I get into these, like, I want to read these 2,000 plus page space operas and stuff like that. And so then I set myself up for like reading way too much all the time.
The thing that got my 50 book backlog back in the day was reading all of the Game of Thrones books that were published at the time. Yeah. Took me quite a while, and like small Bibles with more words than you could think that would fit on such a tiny page.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you there. I know I just got done with that. The Mars series, which was 3 books, each one like around 800 pages or whatever. And it's speculative hard fiction science. So it's not like super easy reading, but it was so worth it, but yeah, it'll take up a big chunk of your time.
Yeah. I mean, no matter how much you love it, I mean, because it's Game of Thrones, and I mean, it's even better than the TV show getting into it, but then you get the inner dialogue and everything. And that's something that I always appreciated with books and comic books, the inner monologuing of getting into somebody else's mind.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Because that's something that we don't get too much from TV or movies.
No, not. It's really hard to do that. I've been rewatching the Jessica Jones on Netflix, I saw the first season when it first came out, and I loved it. And I'm into the second season. It's not as great, but she does a lot of narration in the second season, and it doesn't work. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't click right. It doesn't feel organic. Whatever way that they're doing it, I can't put my finger on it, but whatever way they're doing it, it just doesn't fit for me. It's a hard thing to do.
Let me ask you this. Are you excited for, I haven't asked anybody this, but I am. Are you excited for the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, I definitely am. I've liked all the movies.
Have you heard anything about the movie itself, or are you trying to avoid spoilers, avoid trailers and everything, or are you open to some information that I might have?
Drop it on me. I'm curious.
Okay, so if anybody doesn't want any information, thanks Blackpoll, Matt, for being here now, or just mute for a couple of seconds here before you get the last question popping up. So I heard this, and if it's true, my God, they are gonna have Batman monologuing or narrating in the Batman movie. And I freaked out on that, because if they do it right and good, I'm gonna love it, because it's the first Batman movie that they do it in.
Yeah. I think back to like what's in the forefront of my mind with Batman stuff has been Dark Victory, because I just read it, and Loeb and Sale, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
They really got it.
Yes, they tell such a great, and they did it in the Color series with Daredevil and his love letter to Karen, and that's all almost narration. If they can do the Batman movie and some of that similar narration style and bringing in the impactful moments, oh, that would be incredible. I think that's got me excited too.
Because I guess it makes sense that we would hear his inner thoughts and everything, because there's so much speculation about twists and everything. And then there's, of course, the riddles and everything. So if we would actually hear his mindset on trying to get the answers and trying to puzzle everything together, I guess it would add another layer also to this character. It's
going to show some humanity is what they can do with it. You know, this dark, I got this this persona that I've got to be the Dark Knight, and I've got to speak in a certain way, and I've got to be hardcore, and we can maybe get some softening and see some of the real human side of him. If they could use it for that, I think it could be great.
I'm thinking back to the only animated movie I think that we had any monologuing or narration in, which is Batman Year One by Frank Miller, the animated version. I can remember that they actually kept the narration in that one, so that's a close thing I can imagine to how it would sound, because that's something that I missed from the Dark Knight Returns animated movies, because the narration in that is pretty important. Trying to search for the perfect death and everything. So here's one last question, and I hope we have some people left after I said that it was going to be speculation spoilers. But where can people find you?
As people jokingly commented when you're on my live stream, I'm old man, grumpy old man on Instagram. I have no Instagram, no Facebook. What else are kids on these days? Twitter, Snapchat, Discord. The board game group that I'm involved in, they're all in the Discord. I'm like, oh, you got to get on the Discord. I'm like, nope. One other thing I got to learn. I don't want the screen time. So the one spot you can find me at is the Comic Board, the YouTube channel. And I would love to, if there's any new subscribers out there or just want to come check out my videos. As you mentioned, the key for me is just comments, even if it's just, hey, stop by, I enjoyed this part. I love the interaction. So if you're up for it, and you watch something and you enjoy it, or you don't, you agree with me, or you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear from you. I like talking with people in the community.
Well said. Matt, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I was really looking forward to this, and I'm so honored to be on with you and talking with you.
Honor's all mine. And for everybody that's been watching, thanks so much for doing so. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody. Say bye, Matt.
Adios.